Folks, there's just no other way to put this, but Michigan Athletic Director Warde Manuel and the administration and Board of Regents at the University of Michigan flat out betrayed Sherrone Moore and let him down, not to mention the rest of us. I'll explain next, right here on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Tip. Caught.
Hey, they said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team, and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to a special edition of Michigan Podcast. This will be a shorter edition. I'm going to come clean about some things that I know that I've kept to myself over the last couple of years and connect some dots that I think need connected in light of really the gutless, feckless, shameful, disgusting, cowardly announcement that Michigan made on Monday of a self-imposed suspension of head football coach Sherrone Moore for 2 games. And I think some air needs to get cleared. And, you know, I don't do this for money. It's a hobby to me. And I love Michigan athletics. As a kid that grown up in Michigan, I grew up in an abusive household. And Michigan sports were a lot of times my sanctuary from what was going on in my home. And on more than one occasion, man, I just turned the game up, whether it was Frank Beckman and, on the radio with Jim Brandstatter or Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy rocking the mic on ABC. More than one Saturday afternoon, I just turned the game up just to drown out the verbal and physical abuse from my old man towards my mom and my little brother in the home. Next to my faith and my family, now it's a distant third behind those 2 things, all right? Those 2 things existentially matter. Michigan athletics don't. But next to those 2 things, folks, nothing in my life has brought me more joy than being a fan of the Michigan Wolverines. And now I get to share that with my son. I'm down here in my man cave. You're just getting a look at one corner of this man cave. But this room goes on a bit, and it's a shrine to the experience of my fandom of being a Michigan fan for going over 40 years. You open the door to my basement and come down to the man cave, and you see relics of my Michigan fandom from the very beginning. I've probably spent the gross domestic product of a poor Latin American country on my Michigan fandom over the last 41 years. So what I'm about to say is brutal honesty, but it's all from the heart, because I'm really concerned that the people in charge of this thing that has brought so many of us so much joy will frickin' ruin this thing. if they don't get their heads out of their maize and blue keisters. Okay. And I've got sources too. I'm not Chris Ballas. I'm not Sam Webb. I'm not in that business. Those guys do a great job. That's why I pay them. I've been subscribers to their various websites for over 20 years. So I don't get into that business. It's not what I do. I have another job, takes up 18 hours a day for me already. This is a passion and a hobby of mine that I just do for fun. But, as the show has grown and become more well-known, I've gotten to know boosters and insiders and former players like a lot of other, your insiders have. And I hear things. I don't report them. I don't get involved in that. I let guys who've got time to track things down and make a living doing that. That's their job, not mine. But in this conversation in the next few minutes, I'm going to share some things that I have known and have been told by people who would know that I've not said in the past, because I think we need to connect some dots here. Because I think Michigan, the athletic department at Michigan is in real danger of doing self-harm to the football program. If I am Sherrone Moore, Michigan has just broken a sacred trust with me. Michigan pronounced me guilty in public before the NCAA ever held a hearing. That hearing is still a month away. If what's in these texts that Sherrone deleted were so incriminating, I think we all know whoever is at the NCAA been leaking stuff to Pete Thamel for the last going on 3 years now, they would have had them already. They've leaked literally everything else to Pete Thamel. Why haven't they leaked these texts? Because they're not incriminating, folks. That's why. They're innocuous by and large. That's why. So why is Michigan doing this? I think it is because Michigan has failed to understand what is really happening here from the very beginning. And I say this as someone who was brought into the Connor Stalions saga at the very beginning by Isaiah Hole at Locked On Wolverines and Connor Stalions. Michigan has failed to understand the concept of negotiation and leverage from the start. And Michigan has given away its leverage in this process with the NCAA every step of the way as a result. And what happened this week with what it did to Sherrone Moore in public, I think, is the most inexcusable yet latest example of such. The NCAA, folks, is a dying organization. I mean, it is Schmiegel right now, turned into Gollum at the bottom of a polluted river looking for the precious. It is trying to glom on to any form of relevancy, strength, credibility at all. It has a business model that the courts will no longer permit. The courts will no longer say that you can restrict, if not deny, compensation for your labor without a collective bargaining agreement. That's been the NCAA's business model for a long time. And the courts are not permitting it that any longer. That's why it keeps losing every single time these questions come up. The NCAA is in need greatly of what's called an antitrust exemption so that it can continue to treat its labor as anything but that. In order to obtain that, it probably needs Congress because those are granted typically at the statute level, but now it's lobbying President Trump as well to intervene. But you're not going to get Congress nor the president to intervene for a carcass. You have to show that you're still relevant, that you're worthy of the political capital being expended upon you. And that's where Michigan comes in, because Michigan is the sole university that matters in collegiate sports right now that has shown any form of fear of the NCAA. All of the current, whatever that amount is, all of the current credibility and leverage that the NCAA can claim it publicly has, it has come exclusively at the expense of the University of Michigan the last few years. The only people losing in the court of public opinion and virtually anywhere else to the NCAA, the only people on planet Earth losing to the NCAA, folks, they all go to work within the administrative offices at the University of Michigan, or they're on the state of Michigan's Board of Regents. There's 7 billion people plus on this third rock from the sun. And the only ones getting their asses kicked by the NCAA are all in the administration at the University of Michigan or Michigan's Board of Regents. Shameful. I can tell you for a fact that this is not part of some plea bargain. They would have announced that. If it were, it still would be nauseating and grating, but at least understandable. Hey, we gave them some pound of flesh, make it go away, on with our lives. That's not what this is. The hearing is still going on at the 1st of June. Well, that's about June 6th, so about a month from now. Rather, Michigan is wish casting offering up, it hopes, the NCAA another sacrificial lamb, that the NCAA will say, all right, that's enough. You know, like when Michigan offered up a sacrificial lamb for Burgergate, which giving Jimmy a 3-game suspension, and that wasn't enough. And the NCAA came back with a ridiculous 4-5-year show cause order for the coach. Because, see, Michigan is negotiating against itself. The NCAA is looking at Michigan as a slump buster. I mean, the NCAA is the young man who has chosen perpetual virginity, living in his mom's basement, who is waiting for his mom to fold his laundry again and for Shopify to drop off yet another case of Mountain Dew Code Red. And that guy finally decides it's time to venture outside of the basement of mom and go to a place where maybe, I don't know, things called girls are. And that guy's just looking for any slump buster to say, yes, man, any slump buster. He's got no standards. Are you a breathing human female? Yes, let's roll. He's starting from nowhere. That's what the NCAA is. And the reason why when Michigan keeps offering up its own token self-administered punishments, the NCAA doesn't accept them but keeps tacking them on, is because Michigan is feeding the NCAA's narrative. The NCAA, again, is trying to show President Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress that it is a viable entity worthy of saving and preserving. To do that, it needs to demonstrate where its effectiveness is currently felt and seen. The only school in the entire country providing the NCAA any of that credibility and relevance happens to be in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Michigan is the lone vehicle giving it to them, which is why the NCAA is going to keep coming back for more and more and more. Because that dude that left his mom's basement that found his slump buster, he found this sure thing. So he's going to keep coming back for more and more and more. Like I said, Michigan is still facing that hearing next month. It is negotiating against itself. At no point in any of these various NCAA sagas has Michigan's preemptive sacrifices been accepted by the NCAA, and I certainly would not expect that this will be the case again this time around. So all Warde Manuel did, and I hope you're watching, Warde, I do. I hope you're watching. I'm saying this right to you, and I'd say it to your face if I could. So I hope someone shows this to you. Warde Manuel, athletic director at Michigan, all you did was shame your coach in public for nothing. That's all you did. That's all you did. You shamed and smeared your coach in public for jack frickin' squat. That's what you did. Now, as someone who was brought in at the beginning of the Connor Stalions saga to help with this matter from his side of the fence, I'm not surprised at this, unfortunately, because Michigan has mismanaged this with malfeasance from the very beginning. I remember the very first 3-hour conversation I had with Connor, sizing him up, how honest he was, how truthful he was. Was this really just a guy sent his mom and a few of his buddies to record games on a cell phone and record signals on a cell phone from Section 38E? Or was this the Houston Astros? What was really going on here? Now, as someone who was brought in at the beginning of the Connor Stalions saga, I'm not surprised by any of this, because it became very apparent to me from day one that Michigan managed this with malfeasance from the very beginning. Maybe incompetence, and that would be the best case scenario. The very first time I had a chance to interview Connor, is he a real person? What really went on here? Am I going to get involved in something that's going to make me legally culpable for something? Or is it really true that all this guy did was have his mom and a couple of his buddies go to Section 38E of Ross-Ade Stadium with an iPhone 11 and tape what they saw on the sidelines, which is literally something they could have gotten from any coach's film and most, college football channels on YouTube? Was there something more sinister here? I heard all these rumors as well about Michigan hacked in with Matt Weiss into Ohio State's practice footage and acquired. I heard all that stuff too. And I asked him about all that stuff. I went through all of that stuff. And we did it over the course of about 3 hours, the very first time we met. And he said something in the first hour or so of that conversation that knocked me over with a feather. He just happened to throw in, Connor did, well, Michigan still hasn't interviewed me and has no idea what I know. I said, wait, what? What? They let you out of Schembechler and never gauged what you knew whatsoever? He said, no. They never even tried to interview me. Just took my phone and let me walk out. I don't have a benign, innocent reason for why that could ever happen. My guess is Michigan's plan was to take a family, that are lifelong Michigan faithful, who are probably the most guilty of loving Michigan sports more than they should, with a more balanced life. And they were just going to try to pin this whole thing on them, turn them into enemies, force the family to probably have to defend themselves and their integrity, and now turn this into a multi-year story by turning the Stallion family, throwing them under the bus, and blaming the whole thing on them. And I figured that was probably their plan. That would be a terrible plan. That never works. Okay? Instead, why don't you find out what he actually knows, because you might find out something beneficial to you. For example, do you guys remember how it took about 3 weeks for Connor Stalions to make a statement that said that Jim Harbaugh did not know about any of what I tried to do and that there is no evidence that he did? And then later the Big Ten in its statement admitted that that was true as well. You know, Michigan could have had that day one. If they would have interviewed Connor Stalions, they could have had that day one. They could have used that as leverage day one. They should have never let him leave the building. They should have interviewed him. They should have gotten the statement out of him that he gave 3 weeks later that Jim did not know what was going on. I did this of my own accord. Jimmy did not direct this. They could have been using that as leverage from the beginning. Something to salvage their position from the beginning. But they didn't want to know, or didn't even think to know, and let him walk out of the building. And somehow some schmuck in West Des Moines, Iowa named Steve Deace knew way more about what Connor Stalions did or didn't do than the frickin' administration at the University of Michigan did. The amount of malfeasance and mismanagement that has to take place for that situation to occur. Listen, man, I love me some me. I've got pretty high esteem of my own gifts and abilities. They ain't that high. All right? There's no way I should know more about this than Michigan did. They just chose that. Complete incompetence. And that has been the pattern for this entire process with Michigan. What happened this week with Sherrone Moore, just the latest iteration. I'm told, for example, that Warde Manuel was going to get a search committee together and go through the whole rigmarole right in the middle of recruiting and everything else when Jimmy left for the NFL. And it was President Ono who stepped in and said, "Are you freaking kidding me? Just hire the guy that's already beaten Ohio State and let's just get on with our lives." Speaking of President Ono, him leaving has nothing to do with this. I can just tell you for a fact, President Ono got tired of dealing with politically charged coalitions on both sides, and on a very politically divided campus in a very politically divided state. Got tired of dealing with it. Florida offered him a 300% salary increase with no state income tax, so he took it. Now, from what I understand at the University of Florida, President Ono has just exchanged hundreds of potential headaches for one giant migraine called an egotist who thinks he's the potentate of the whole campus, so we wish him well. But that had absolutely this has nothing to do with why he left. But you rope yourself into these kinds of conspiracy theories when you're this inept and this incompetent. And I struggle to see, watching Warde Manuel, I want to like him. Right? I want to go against conventional wisdoms. I've made a career out of it. It's been largely successful. I give him credit for hiring Dusty May, then retaining Dusty May. But when I've watched the way he has handled this situation, and let me give you a tough guy's statement about Jim's suspension, and then completely surrender and grab my ankles. Let's have a tough statement in response to the notice of allegations from the attorneys, and then turn around on a random Monday in May and assume the position for the NCAA yet again and grab my ankles again. Dude, how did you survive playing 4 years for Bo Schembechler with this amount of fecklessness? Back in an era when no one knew what concussions were or even cared, where, hey, it's not practice unless somebody pukes. And yet this amount of kowtowing to a bunch of freaking nerds, losers and trolls at the NCAA blows my mind. Charlie Baker gets laughed out of every room he's in, unless he's in a room with somebody, particularly Warde Manuel at the University of Michigan, apparently. Again, it would be one thing if this was part of a plea bargain, but it's not. And the entire structure administratively at Michigan, I know for a fact, for example, that a Michigan fan and supporter that is somewhat known went to the state attorney general at Michigan, in the state of Michigan, who herself is a big Michigan fan, when the entire thing with Stalions, the NCAA, and Burgergate and all this was going on, and saying, "Hey, you want to succeed Gretchen Whitmer one day as governor? Are you seeing all these Southern AGs that are successfully going after the NCAA? Man, we know you love the Michigan Wolverines. We could really use you right now." Her office passed. So, I mean, every step of the way, The team and the program's been let down by the administration, and so therefore are the fans. Because, brother, we ain't paying those exorbitant prices to watch Warde Manuel athletic direct. We ain't paying those exorbitant prices to watch the Board of Regents meet. It's to watch Sherrone Moore and his players. They're the product. I'm at the point right now, I mean, gosh, could you even imagine if this was reversed? Could you imagine a president and an AD at Ohio State University preemptively suspending a coach for getting burgers for breakfast for recruits before there's an NCAA ruling? Folks, I think we all know Ohio would require Secret Service to stop him from what he has planned from a water tower for the Ohio State administration. But over here, it's just self-immolation, self-flagellation. I can't wait. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another? Michigan's administration's like Dustin Hoffman in Marathon Man. Is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? And the NCAA's Laurence Olivier just pulling out teeth. It's weak. It's sad. It's low T. It's pathetic. It's not worthy of this program. At this point, we need to hope that Brohio's masturbatory fever dreams about Matt Weiss being brought in as an ace hacker and not just some creeper that John and Jim Harbaugh should have never hired in the first place and ought to be thrown in a hole where they throw away the hole for the rest of his life. We need to hope that Matt Weiss really was some like savant, idiot with Asperger's that can crack every nine frame codes of computer imaging and got into Ohio State's cloud. That would bring me more comfort. That would explain all of this level of ankle grabbing and internal turmoil. But I think we both know that Brohio is still the same loser he's always been. And that Michigan is really doing this out of fear of Paul Blart, mall cop. I think we all recognize this. The number one role of any athletic director, I think, for a program is to do no harm. Warde Manuel, I think, is doing great harm to the Michigan program at the moment. And I don't know who's in charge with Ono moving on. You got some regents there. They have to have some ambitions. Some of them have to not be tone deaf. Someone needs to step in here and say stop. And that, when you're digging your own grave, the first step is to put down the shovel. And right now the shovel has a name monogrammed on it when the initials look very much like WM to me. Now, I can't be the only one who thinks this, but I don't need this as a job. I don't need this as a career. I don't owe anybody anything. I don't need access to something for a show or a podcast or anything of that nature. And I probably have the most watched channel of a Michigan fan that doesn't need any of those things. So maybe it's up to me to be the bad guy and say what needs to be said yet again. But stop it. Stop. You're killing us out there, Warde. You're freaking killing us. Stop it. Stop. And if I were an AD at Arkansas or Oklahoma or Auburn, an SEC program that's likely going to have an opening this fall after the season, I'm calling Sherrone Moore. I'm calling him and say, hey, what's the buyout, man? We actually care about winning here. Like his alma mater might have an opening. I'd be calling him. Say, hey, we've seen you win a couple of big games already. How about playing at a school where the AD's not out there and the athletic administration and your board of regents isn't out there trying to shame you in public? Have you thought about coming here where, winning is what we do and we're not ashamed of it? Stop this. You're hurting the program. You're embarrassing yourselves. You're shaming the coach and you're pissing off your fans. Stop it. And again, back to where I opened. All of this is simply from the heart because I love this team. I love that helmet. I love that song. I love the memories. And I love the moments. And I'm afraid if this level of mismanagement continues, those things that we got to take for granted in our time, in my son's time as a fan, he may not be able to with the current leadership behaving as it is. Stop it. Go Blue.